Beto O'Rourke is trying to break through a crowded field of 2020 candidates, but some could say he's used to running an underdog campaign. The former congressman got national attention during the midterms. He came 2.6 percentage points away from ousting Texas Republican Senator Ted Cruz. In HBO's new documentary, Running with Beto, we get a front row seat into that campaign. It became the best statewide performance for a Texas Democrat in nearly 25 years. Here's a short preview.
So we've had 16 town halls. I will buy you a donut if you can name all 16.
Okay, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay.
I'm fact checking you, so.
Rockwall, Greenville, Sulphur Springs, Emory, Mineola.
In universal background checks for everyone who wants to purchase a firearm.
Tyler, Canton, Terrell, Waxahachie.
Legalizing both the dreamers and their parents.
Okay, hang with me.
I'm in this car, so I can't go anywhere.
Cleburne,
Yes.
Mahia, Bryan,
Universal, guaranteed, high-quality health care for every American.
San Benito,
Yes. Bring it home, number 16.
Weslaco.
Weslaco.
All right.
You got all 16. I owe you a
that was
donut.
good, man. All right. Could I get 6 donuts?
And David Modigliani is the director of Running with Beto. He joins me now from Austin, Texas. Welcome, David. Thanks so much for being with us. So you followed Beto from an early stage in his campaign for Senate, well before he made national headlines. What initially drew you to him as a candidate, and did anything surprise you along the way?
I first met Beto at a Sandlot baseball game here in Austin, Texas, when his Diablitos de El Paso were in town to play our team here in Austin. And Beto had announced he was running about 6 weeks prior. And what drew me to him was really the experiment in democracy he was setting out to run. It was clear he was this dynamic, magnetic person with a real talent for empathy, had all those things that you couldn't teach a candidate. But what drew me in was the idea that he was going to go to every county in Texas, including the most conservative, that he was going to run only accepting donations from other human beings, no corporations or PACs. That felt like an exciting odyssey to follow, and that's what we did. We shot for the next 12 months, the final year of the campaign, and that's the film about his 28th Senate race that is out now on HBO.
All right. Now, while we see O'Rourke traveling around the state in this documentary, a big chunk of it is based in his hometown of El Paso, Texas, which is a town I lived in for a long time in my childhood as well.
The 915.
That's right. I'm curious how the people of El Paso regard Beto now that he is such a figure on the national stage.
Well, I can't speak too much to how they view him. I know they enjoyed the premiere of the film that we had there, and certainly I know he's done a lot for that community and Fort Bliss, which is based there in El Paso. But I know that his story is very wrapped up in the story of the border. As someone who's raising his kids about 6 blocks from Mexico, I know the issue of immigration, of asylum seekers that are being illegally turned away at our ports of entry is something that concerns him. And we see that a lot in this film. We were, behind the scenes and with Beto when the no tolerance, zero tolerance policy first went into effect, where children were being separated from their families. And we flew down to McAllen, Texas, where Beto met with Customs and Border Patrol and local officials and was really trying to get to the bottom of what was going on. Later led a march in Tornillo near El Paso, Texas, right, which really drew a lot of media attention to the issue. And that was a really dynamic part of that campaign and the film as well.
And I got to say, again, as someone who lived for a long time in Texas, I know as well as anyone that Texas is much more of a purple state than a lot of people think. I mean, obviously it's been red for a long time, but there's a lot of blue support as well. So I'm just curious how much you think the rise of O'Rourke in Texas had to do with him as a candidate or him just as an alternative to Senator Ted Cruz.
Absolutely. I mean, I think, Texas is not a red state or a blue state. It's really a non-voting state. I think recently we were 50th in the country in voter turnout. That said, I think after the 2016 election and the response to Trump's victory and really to a sort of crisis in our democracy, there was really a powerful grassroots energy that you could feel in this state. And it was sort of looking for the match that was going to light it on fire. And when I first met Beto, I had a sense of, this is the guy, this is a leader that can really pull people together. He's the first to say, I think, in the film as well, that he was sort of a vessel for this energy, this outpouring in Texas. And I think the kind of grassroots activism that we saw, and we feature these three different characters within the film: formerly Republican, gay Latinx woman from the Valley, 17-year-old from Houston, Texas, African-American kid who's a gun safety advocate, and a rural gun enthusiast from Texas, all sort of getting behind Beto. Just as representative, we tried to capture, with them in the film, of that energy that has come out behind him. And I think, we're going to see a lot of that in the upcoming election cycle as well.
Well, I'm curious about that because, of course, now O'Rourke is not running for Senate. He's running for President of the United States. His campaign is doing a little reboot after criticism of its initial launch. And we know so far his performance has been a little bit tepid. So, compared to what you've seen so far of his 2020 bid, how much does it resemble his Senate campaign?
Well, to be honest, I haven't followed the presidential campaign closely. We were focused on telling the story of the Senate race. But I think, what the Senate race showed and what our film showed is that Beto has a real ability to inspire people, to connect with them, and to pull people into the political process for the first time. So many first-time voters, so many people that had not been involved in a campaign before came out in support of him and connected, I think, to the way that he had this really human person-to-person connection as he went out campaigning and across social media. I think he really showed that he can bring people into the process that way, which I think is what we're going to need from whoever the nominee is in order to beat Trump in 2020. And I think the campaign is very long. I always think it's like impossible to humanly internalize just how long this primary will be. And I think everyone will sort of have their moment, and you kind of hope yours happens at the right time. My sense is that he's out there in the primary states, meeting people, building an organization, and I think he'll be around for quite a while, and we'll see if his approach connects, on a nationwide basis.
Now, one of the criticisms of O'Rourke, though, when he originally launched his 2020 bid, was that he seemed to lack some policy specifics. We see in your film that he meets with gun control activists and prison reform activists on a few separate occasions. How much of his campaign ended up being about tangible proposals, or more about his ability to connect with people and sort of, light that spark you were talking about earlier?
Yeah, I think he had a human connection, obviously, on the trail, but Beto was also very candid about his policy positions, many of which a consultant would tell you in Texas that you should never do if you're a Democrat. Beto was in support of banning assault weapons in the state of Texas. He was for legalizing not only the Dreamers, but also their parents. Had some really ambitious plans around climate change and other key issues. So I guess I saw, and I think you see in the film, that people connect with him on a personal level, but also in a sense to the very direct ways that he wanted to make change around guns, immigration, climate, and had some really concrete ideas there, many of which he really did gather by going out to meet with people in local communities. And that's some of what I've been seeing. I know in Oklahoma, he was there just a couple of days ago on the ground looking at flood damage and the effects of climate change. And I think he has this sense that when policy is driven by those that you meet with and talk with, that's when it can be most effective.
Yeah, and he certainly finds a way of making social media effective as well. He really knows how to use that well in his campaign. David Modigliani, we thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much. Pleasure, and hope everyone can catch the film on HBO.
That's right. The HBO documentary film Running with Beto is available on HBO Now, HBO Go, and on demand.